Hey guys, tonight we draw back the string on medieval archers, a brotherhood sworn to wood and sinew whose skill could turn the tide of castles and battles alike. This story isn't just about blood and mud. It's about the relentless training that forged steady arms, the hush before the volley, and the quiet victories when an arrow found its mark. Imagine dawn breaking over a misty field, the weight of your longbow in calloused hands, and the taste of dawn air laced with horse sweat and hope. From the rhythmic chant of foot soldiers to the tension of drawn string, you'll see how a single arrow could decide the fate of kingdoms. We're asking what it would actually feel like to survive just one day as an archer in the Middle Ages. Let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always amazing to see who joins the ranks. Now dim the torches, draw a deep breath, and let's step into the quiver of history together. You wake before the sun breaks over the ramparts, not to birdsong but to the low rumble of half-drunk soldiers snoring on rough straw mats. Your own bed is little more than a pile of damp chaff under a canvas sling, and you roll off onto the cold earthen floor with a grunt. Your wrist protests where that carved bone brace still clings, shivering in the chill of dawn. The brace is smooth and yellowed with age. Its curved form is etched with tiny runes you traced yourself after that blow to the arm last winter. You flex your fingers and feel the warmth returning as you sit up on one elbow. Slivers of pale light creep through cracks in the wooden wall and land on broken arrows and leather quivers stacked by the hearth. You catch the scent of tar from the roof seams, mixing with the faint sweetness of oats that remain from last night porridge in the cook's cauldron, now hardened to crusty lumps on the lid. Somewhere just beyond the barracks door, a guard paces his beat, and you hear the rattle of his hobnails against stone. You stretch and feel your back crack louder than the bowstrings you will set tight before breakfast. Every muscle in your body complains, but you welcome the ache, because it means you are alive and ready. You haul yourself onto unsteady feet and brush straw from your rough-spun tunic. The fabric is stiff from clay dust and sweat, but it will have to do until the tailor has time for you. You step over the boots of a comrade still immersed in dreams of tournament triumphs. He mumbles something about a bull SI just before you leave his snore zone. In the dim light, you step outside and inhale the morning air. Frost glistens on the crude timber beams overhead. The courtyard is still hushed, save for a dozen archers trudging toward the training yard. Each man carries a longbow nearly as tall as he is. The ashwood is polished smooth where grateful fingers have traced its curve. You give a nod to the man on your left who tips his cap in return. No words are needed between brothers of the bow. You slip your arm through the bone brace and wrap the leather ties snug against your forearm. It clicks into place, and you flex against its support. Last season, it saved you from a fletching accident that might have left you bowless for good. You tap the brace 3 times for luck, then secure the straps. The dull weight of the brace against bone and sinew reminds you that carelessness can cost more than a missed shot. Smoke from the cook's chimney curls through a hole in the rafters, and you follow it toward the great hall. Inside, the hearth glows with embers still hot from last night's fire. The cook greets you with a nod and ladles barley gruel into a wooden bowl. He hands you a thick slice of rye bread that offers little resistance to your teeth, but fills your belly enough to steady your aim. You find a bench beside the hearth and settle in. Comrades clank wooden bowls as they gather around, and you share a wry smile when the youngest archers argue over who poured too much water into the porridge. Between bites, you lean forward and trace the scorch marks on the hearth rim. Each blackened patch recalls a morning like this one, when half sleep and half hunger nearly sent your arrow wide of a man-sized target. You clear your throat and exchange a hushed joke about cooking practice bricks instead of mutton yesterday. Laughter ripples through the circle, and you feel the warmth of fellowship spread through your chest. Service to crown and kin is more than duty. It is a bond hammered in shared piles. When the porridge is gone, you lift the bowl to your lips, Swish the last milky residue around, then toss the wooden dish onto the scullery pile. You rise and stretch again as the morning ritual is complete. Outside, the sun has crested the north wall and casts long shadows across the yard. You adjust your quiver so the heads of your arrows brush the back of your cloak. You double-check the fletching on your practice arrows, then slot one between forefinger and middle finger. The feathers feel familiar and reassuring against your palm. The Master-at-Arms stands at the center of the yard with arms folded under his thick gambeson. His gaze sweeps over the assembled archers, and he inclines his head twice in signal that the line is ready. You step forward to join the formation and let the dew from the grass dampen your boots. The air is cold, and your breath forms clouds in the morning light. You draw your bowstring back for the first time today, and feel the sinew hum against your fingers. The master calls out the first command loose, and your arrow sails toward the straw target, a tenth of a mile away. The thwack of impact echoes through the yard, and you allow your lips to tighten in satisfaction. You step to the side and watch as your comrades fire in unison until the first volley rings clear and true. The rattle of bowstrings and the chorus of arrows striking straw form a symphony you know by heart. Between drills, you wiggle your toes and peel grass blades from your boots. You rest at the back and watch the second line of archers practice spur shots beneath an open overhang. Every successful shot draws a murmur of respect. You remember your own first accurate arrow after the master declared you ready for patrol duty. That day, you felt taller than a castle tower. The sky brightens further as the cold begins to lift. You turn your face to the east and feel the sun's first warmth on your cheek. You catch sight of manor windows above the battlements and imagine the noble family within enjoying breakfast in fine silks. You shake your head and remind yourself that true honor belongs to those who stand in the yard through wind and rain so that banners may fly free. When the master dismisses the formation, you collect your arrows and return to the barracks where you stow your bow against the post. You exchange nods with a veteran who claps you on the shoulder to say that your draw is growing stronger. You sink back onto your damp straw mat and run your hand over the carved runes on your bone brace. You smile, knowing that another day has begun one more chance to prove your skill and stand shoulder to shoulder with the brotherhood sworn to wood and sinew. The crown calls you. Kin depend on you. You will not falter. After the volley ends, you gather your arrows from the bale and stack them carefully in your quiver, the fletching soft against your palm. You step off the practice line and wipe dew from your bow with the hem of your tunic. The yard is littered now, with discarded arrow shafts and footprints pressed into the soft earth. You bend to pick up stray feathers and bone splinters, slipping each into your pouch to fuel tomorrow's repairs. Every bit of material will be needed when the wind whips fierce or the shafts splinter in battle. Your fellow archers wipe sweat from their brows, though the sun has yet to climb high. You exchange quiet nods as you cross the courtyard back toward the barracks. A horn sounds from the battlements, low and resonant, calling all able archers to muster before the captain. You exchange a quick glance with the sergeant. He gives a curt nod, and you step lively toward the great hall. Your feet crunch over gravel and broken pottery shards, the sound anchoring you to the moment. Inside the hall, torches gutter in iron sconces, casting flickering light over rough timber walls. A line of leather jerkined archers stands at attention, breathing even and ready. You slide into rank beside a veteran whose eyes carry the quiet confidence of many campaigns. The captain enters, his boots echoing on the flagstones. He surveys the line, then speaks in a voice that carries both command and reassurance. You lean forward to catch each word. He announces that a patrol will ride north to scout, approaching scouts rumored to be gathering beyond the oak wood. A murmur runs down the line at the prospect of travel, though none dare show excitement in his presence. He reminds you that terrain will be rough, that wind and rain are likely, and that each arrow must count for 3. He tells you to check your equipment to ensure each brace and strap holds firm, to ease into the morrow with caution and resolve. Then, he dismisses you. A single nod, and you file out, ready for whatever lies ahead. You slip from the hall into the armory, where racks of bows and quivers line the walls. A young quartermaster greets you by name and hands you a spare string wrapped in oiled cloth. You accept it with a nod and set it beside your brace. Then you move to the table where shafts await trimming. You pick one up and run your thumb along its length, feeling for knots or splinters that could spell disaster in flight. You gently sand the tip where the arrowhead will seat. Each motion is practiced and sure, woven into muscle memory that has saved your life more than once. A squire approaches with a cloth-wrapped bundle, careful not to jostle its contents too harshly. He unwraps it to reveal steel bodkin points forged the night before. You press one to the glow of a brazier, testing its heat and hardness, then slip it onto the shaft. The point seats with a soft click against the wood. You give it a twist and push, and the bond feels perfect. You repeat this 6 more times. Each arrow a promise between your hand and the unseen target. By the time you finish the last arrow, your wrist aches beneath the brace, and you pause, flexing each finger. The tender rasp of bone against flesh reminds you of the accident that forged the brace. You trace a fingertip over the carved runes, and whisper a quiet thanks to the smith who taught you both steel and healing. You slip the arrows into your quiver, each shaft resting like a silent sentinel. Outside the armory, the wind has begun to pick up. You huddle into your cloak and step into the courtyard once more. Clouds scud low across a pale sky, the scent of damp earth rising from the grass. The captain's horn sounds again, sharper this time, and you hurry to mount your horse at the far end of the yard. Your saddle waits empty beneath a tarpaulin. You throw the cloth aside and lift yourself into the stirrups with practiced ease. The horse fidgets, but stands firm as you cinch the straps. You tether your bow to the saddle horn and hang your quiver within easy reach. A groom brushes fallen straw from the leather, then dips to pick up a dropped horseshoe nail. He tucks it into his pouch, and with a mischievous grin tells you that good luck comes in unlikely forms. You share a brief smile before adjusting your stirrups and tightening the girth one more notch. Archers mount behind you, each settling into the rhythm of horse and road. The line of riders moves out through the barracks gate, the creak of wood blending with the whinny of horses and the thrum of hooves on cobblestone. You greet the sergeant in passing, and he claps you on the shoulder with forceful pride. His heavy armor glints in the fleeting sunlight. You nod and ride on, feeling the warmth of his confidence wash through you. The village just outside the gates lies quiet now. Smoke drifts above rooftop chimneys, and a few early risers wave at the passing column. You catch the glint of a child's wooden toy on a windowsill and feel a pang of longing for simpler mornings, for a hearth fire and warm porridge shared with kin. But that is a world for another time. Today you ride for the crown, for kin, for the honor of the Archer's Brotherhood. The road dips into a valley where a shallow stream winds through reeds. You guide your horse down the slope and reach for a waterskin. You lift it to your lips and drink the cool water, tasting its purity against the grit of dust in your mouth. Around you, your comrades quaff from theirs, each sip a small rebirth. You wipe your mouth on your sleeve and stow the skin on your saddle. Up ahead, the oak wood looms, its ancient trunks stretching toward the heavens. Beyond its edge, the rumors speak of enemy scouts, of banners carried from distant lands, of steel to meet steel. You draw your horse forward, the line tightening as the brigade prepares to enter shadow. You feel the weight of your bow against your side and the reassuring bulk of your brace beneath your sleeve. For a moment you recall the dawn's gentle light through your barracks window, the smell of oats and tar, the feel of damp straw beneath your body, the hush of sleeping men. Now you ride into unknown danger. Yet your heart beats steady with purpose, each breath a vow that you will not falter. You will be the eye of precision that unsettles the storm flame of arrows that wills freedom from tyranny. With that silent promise, you urge your horse into a trot and cross the threshold of the oak wood, leaving the dawn behind to greet the trials of the day. Tonight, you will rest once more on your straw mat, bone brace still warm against your skin, the faint weight of victory or defeat broken only by the rhythm of your own steady breath. You find yourself once more in the great hall before the first light has fully settled on the sky. The long wooden tables are already alive with movement. Comrades gather around the steaming cauldrons, their breath rising in soft clouds as they lean in to spoon out thick porridge. You step forward and settle your bowl beneath the cook's ladle, watching the barley grit tumble in like pebbles arriving at a shore. The porridge is heavy but warm, flecked with bits of crushed grain that have soaked overnight, and it smells of earth and hearth smoke. A squire sets a small wooden cup beside your bowl and fills it with pale liquid that catches the torchlight. You lift it to your lips and sip the mead. It is sweet like spring flowers pressed into honeycomb, and it spreads through your chest like a promise. It is not the finest vintage, but it is enough to chase away the morning chill. You catch the eye of your neighbor, a veteran whose laugh still carries the echo of victories long past, and he raises his cup in a morning salute. You return the gesture. Across the table, the youngest recruits fiddle with their wooden spoons, the back of their tunics damp from the night's dew. They look unsure and stiff in their new bows, but their eyes light up when the older archers nod in greeting. You draw in a breath of barley steam and offer them a slow grin, remembering your own first morning meal here, when the porridge nearly dribbled down your chin. One boy returns the smile and digs in, determination carving lines on his youthful face. Above the murmur of spoons against bowls, you hear the sergeant's voice, firm but not unkind, calling each man by name to report how many arrows he cleaned last night and how tight his brace feels this morning. One by one, your comrades speak up. You say that you repaired 7 shafts and that your brace sits snug. The sergeant nods in approval and moves on, satisfied that your skill and care will keep you alive when you stand on a wall or in a field of blades. Between spoonfuls, you lean back and let your eyes drift to the far side of the hall where the light catches the copper trappings of the cook's cauldron. You recall the first time you saw it when you arrived as a green youth fresh from home. It seemed as large as a castle gate and as hot as dragonfire. Now it is an old friend, its metal blackened at the base, its lid nicked with stray arrowheads and scraped by cast-iron spoons. A comrade slides in beside you and offers a piece of crisped bacon from the side platter. You chew it slowly, the salt cracking between your teeth like small explosions of flavor. You watch him lean over to another archer and share a jest in a low voice. You cannot hear the words, but you see their shoulders shake with silent laughter. You feel the warmth of belonging spread through you stronger than any hearth fire. When you at last lift your bowl to your lips, you swirl the last milky residue and let it coat your tongue. You swallow and close your eyes for a moment, savoring the final moment of morning calm before the day's trials. You set the bowl down and tap it twice on the table. A squire sweeps beneath the benches and gathers up the dishes. You gather the empty bowl in one hand and glug the last of the mead in the other. Outside the hall, the wind has risen and carries a chill that bites at exposed skin. You pull the hood of your cloak over your head and tighten the cord beneath your chin. You step back into the courtyard where the grass is damp with frost, the ground firm beneath your boots. Your quiver waits beside your bow rack, the arrows fletched and ready. A young archer practices drawing his bow nearby, his arm trembling as he holds the string at full draw. You step to his side and offer a few pointers. Shift your weight onto your back foot, roll your shoulder forward, keep your gaze steady on the target. He nods and tries again, the string humming as it reaches peak tension. This time his arrow flies truer. His face breaks into a broad grin, and he bows toward you in thanks. You draw your own bow from its rack and nock an arrow. You lift the string to your cheek and draw back with smooth precision, the brace on your wrist clicking softly. You settle your aim on a distant tree stump and release. The arrow flies in a straight arc and lands deep. You let the string buzz against your fingertips and breathe out slowly. Another morning victory, earned. As you collect your arrow from the stump, you feel the sun begin to break fully across the yard. Its rays chase away the last of the frost and set the dew alight in countless diamonds on each blade of grass. You tip your head back and let the warmth fill your face. You feel your belly and your heart both steadied by breakfast and friendship. When you return the arrow to your quiver, you hear the call to assemble in the stable yard beyond the chapel. The captain plans to test your aim at moving targets today before sending you out on patrol. You nod to the comrade beside you. Together, you stride toward the next trial. Your empty bowl and cup are forgotten on the bench, but not your morning feast, which you carry in every drawer of the bow and every pulse of your steady arm. Today you serve crown and kin, and you will not falter. You lift your bowl from the table and empty the last cold dribble of mead into your mouth. You press your lips together against the sweetness that will linger on your tongue for the next hour. You let your bowl clatter onto the scullery pile and settle your mead cup beside it. The cook nods once in approval, then moves on to the next ladle of porridge. You stand and rub your hands together, warming them against each other before reaching for your cloak. Around you, the hall hums with conversation. An older archer tells a story of the day he split a hawk's eye at 200 yards. Young recruits lean forward, eyes wide, as he pantomimes the draw of the bow and the nod of thanks the hawk gave before it tumbled from the sky. You press a hand to your own brace and feel a spark of pride. Tomorrow, you might add your own tale to the hall's lore. You step over a coiled bowstring lying on the floor and snake your cloak from its peg. The wool is heavy with the scent of smoke and sweat, but you welcome its weight. It reminds you that you belong here among these men. You sweep a stray lock of hair from your eyes and tight grip the edge of your cloak to keep the morning breeze at bay. By the hearth, two veterans trade insults and advice in a low growl. One argues that the new feathering glue is no match for boiled hide oil. The other insists that hide oil will slip in the rain, and that glue alone will keep an arrow fletching true. Neither yields ground, but each caresses the other on the shoulder once a point lands, and laughter breaks the tension. You step between them and offer your own opinion on the matter. The banter grows warmer, more raucous, and soon everyone is shouting over each other about arrow shafts and bow limbs. You smile and let the madness wash over you. Beyond the hall, the stable door stands open, and you hear the soft neigh of horses. You sling your cloak over one arm and pick up your bowl to carry it outside. The courtyard stones glisten with frost that cracks under your boots. You pause at the threshold and glance back at the cook scrubbing the cauldron's rim. He lifts his hand in farewell and you return the gesture, your bowl cradled against your chest like a fragile prize. Outside, the wind bites sharper than any spear. You pull your cloak snug and tuck your chin to your chest. A stable hand in patched jerkin beckons you forward. You step from the hall into the chill and feel every hair stand at attention. Frost clings to your eyelashes and you blink it away. In the dim light, you can just make out the outline of your horse's stable. He whickers softly when he sees you. You enter the stall and breathe in the warm scent of straw and hay. The stable hand strokes the horse's flank and hands you a bucket of warm water. You lift the bucket carefully, testing its warmth, then pour it down the animal's mane. Steam rises in a gentle cloud. The horse shakes its head, flicking droplets of water onto your boots. You laugh and wipe your arm on your cloak. The stable hand nods at your brace, then ushers you to a trough where cold spring water bubbles under frozen leaves. You scoop handfuls to wash your own hands before returning the bucket to its rack. With your hands now clean, you reach into your pouch and retrieve a piece of dried venison. You bite off a small chunk and chew slowly, the salty meat pulling free of the bone in thin ribbons. You swallow and savor the last vestige of breakfast. Your comrades do the same, settling in beside you on upturned barrels. The stable hand leans against the post and cracks a grin at your contented size. Finished, you rise and wipe your mouth on the back of your hand. You pat the horse's shoulder and whisper a quick thanks for his patience. He nuzzles your shoulder in return. You slip from the stall and step back into the yard. The draft catches you and you shiver despite the warmth of the meat still coursing through you. On the far side of the courtyard, a narrow gate leads toward the riverside road. You join the line of archers filing toward it. Each man carries his bow over his shoulder and grips his quiver at his hip. The chill seems less biting now that your belly is full and your hands are clean. You fall in step with the veteran who told the hawk story. He hums an old hunting tune, and you find yourself humming along. The path winds past the guardhouse and out onto the fields. Pale dawn light paints the sky in streaks of pink and grey. You inhale, the cold filling your lungs like ice water. In the distance, you see the silhouette of the training stream winding between frosted reeds. Beyond it, the low hill where earlier drills tested your aim in the dark. You quicken your pace to catch up with the group. The veteran swings his bow in time with his step. He glances back and offers you a grin that says, "Prepare yourself." You nod and adjust your brace. It clicks once, twice, then holds firm. His approval bolsters your confidence. You know he has survived dozens of campaigns, and yet he still shares that quiet pride in each arrow you loose. Up ahead, the archers pause at the edge of a copse. The ground is crusted with frost and dotted with hoofprints from the night's grazing. You wipe your gloved hand across your bracer and free the leather strap that holds your water skin. You take a sip of cool water, then tuck the skin back against your side. Your cloak catches the wind and flaps behind you like a banner. A scout riding a lean grey horse emerges from the trees. He rides to the front of the column and calls your captain's name. The captain dismounts and exchanges a few tense words. You strain to hear mention of enemy scouts, but the wind carries only fragments. The captain nods grimly, then returns to the group and calls out for volunteers to scout the opposite bank. Hands raise and gloves fall as eager archers step forward. Your heart pounds as you consider the ground you may cover today. The captain's gaze sweeps the field and lands on you. He nods once, sharp and decisive. You step forward and unsling your bow. The chosen archers mount their horses and head down the slope toward the stream. The rest of the company follows at walking pace, bows at the ready. Frost crunches under hoof and boot, each step reminding you that the ground is hard beneath lies and memory. You ride at the front with the scout, his knuckles white on the reins. The stream banks are iced at the edges, and the water runs black and cold. You dismount and lead your horse through the shallows, the current tugging at his hoof. He paws at the water, then steps forward with cautious strength. You climb onto his back once the bank is beaten down. Above you, the sky brightens to pale blue. Ahead, the opposite bank stretches green and open. The earth there is softer, and you spy footprints at the waterline. The scout dismounts quickly and crouches to examine them. You slip quietly from your saddle and stand beside him. He points out tracks from a column of infantry followed by wagons. The imprint of wheels is unmistakable. You stand and let the cold seep through your cloak. Your breath hisses in your mask. The scout turns and whispers that the enemy is not far. You nod and draw your bow. Each arrow in your quiver feels like a promise to your comrades behind. You glance back through the stream and see the company paused, watching you. You stand at the edge of battle yet to come, fueled by the morning feast of barley porridge and honeyed mead. Your heart beats steady with purpose. You release the string and let the arrow sail across the water toward the distant bank, where steel and fate await. You step into the Fletcher's workshop before the sun has fully climbed the sky. The roof pitched steep and open to the wind that rattles clay tiles overhead. Long workbenches run down the center of the room, each scarred by years of blade and file. Sunlight spills through high windows, illuminating dust motes that swirl like tiny specters above piles of raw ash shafts and heaped bundles of goose feathers. The air smells of warm wood sap and resinous glue, laced with the tang of iron from the tools hanging on wooden pegs along the walls. At your station, you find a crate of freshly hewn ash shafts, still marked with the saw's faint ridges. You lift one free and hold it to the light, testing its straightness by eye. A quick twist in your grip reveals a slight warp. You set that one aside and reach for another. Your fingers close around the smooth grain of the chosen shaft. You run a coarse file along its length, each pass shaving off slivers of wood until the surface gleams like burnished bronze. The rasping sound echoes in the workshop as your comrades file in unison, the rhythm a steady heartbeat of purpose. Beside you, a fellow archer taps out the curvature of his own shaft, humming a tune that drifts through the rafters. You return the nod. That means I hear you, and I hear your song, and you smile as your file strokes the wood. The Master Fletcher, an elderly man whose forearms show the swirl of veins beneath tanned skin, moves between the benches. He pauses to inspect each shaft in turn, his keen eye finding the faintest imperfection. He taps a perfect shaft with the butt of his knife and declares it fit for battle, then moves on. You catch his approving glance and feel a quiet surge of pride. When your crate of shafts lies smooth and true, you set them upright in a rack and turn to the feather pile. Hundreds of goose feathers lie spread on a waxed cloth-white plumes, still tinged with the soft grey of down at their quills. You select one and clamp its base in a wooden vise carved low to the table. With small shears, you trim the tip so that the vein yawns true, then pass it to be caught by a comrade who holds it gently at the tip. You continue until you have 6 ready for fletching. Next comes the glue. The Master Fletcher lifts a cauldron of melted hide glue from its brazier and sets it atop a trivet carved from oak. A companion stirs it with a curled strip of copper, releasing a piney warmth that clings to your nostrils. You dip a slender brush into the amber liquid and coat the quivered end of your first feather. Then, you press it against the shaft at the correct angle, rotating the feather until it clicks into position. You hold it there for a heartbeat, then move on to the next. Your hands tremble with concentration. A misaligned feather will send your arrow wide of its mark. Across the table, another archer accidentally drips glue onto his tunic. He curses softly and drags a rag across the spot, smearing the sticky fluid into a grey patch. You laugh and pass him a scrap of cloth from your gear. He grins back and thanks you before returning to his own fletching. The atmosphere is brisk and focused, but warmed by camaraderie. No one here works alone. Each shaft, each feather, each knot of binder cord carries the weight of every archer who will draw it tight on the battlefield. When a bundle of 6 arrows is complete, you lift them to eye level and spin them slowly. You watch the feathers dance in unison, their veins aligned like soldiers in formation. You give a satisfied nod and slide the bundle into your quiver. The Master Fletcher paces by and plucks one arrow free from your bundle. He draws it back gently, as though testing a bowstring, then releases it into a leather target suspended at the workshop end. The arrow sinks in with a soft thwack, and the group breaks into quiet applause. You catch your breath and accept the Master's word that your fletching is more than acceptable. By midday, the workshop hums with activity. New recruits file shafts, veterans fletch feathers, and apprentices mix glue and prepare toolkits for the next shift. The soundscape is punctuated by the tap-tap of files, the soft snip-snip of shears, and the low murmur of shared stories. Someone recounts a near miss when a shaft snapped mid-volley and buried itself in the gatehouse door. Laughter ripples through the benches as your comrades mock each other's clumsy moments, but each tale carries a lesson. You lean in and listen, storing each anecdote like a precious arrow in your own quiver of wisdom. The sun slides westward, and long shadows fall across the dusty floor. You wipe resin from your fingertips and rest your back against the workbench. Your arms ache where you filed and fletched, but your spirit is buoyed by every perfect arrow you send off the line. One by one, you and your fellow archers gather your newly fletched arrows and display them before the Master Fletcher. He inspects each in turn, then calls out the finest, awarding each owner a small nod of distinction. When your name rings out, you feel a rush of warmth that outshines any forge fire. As the day's work draws to a close, you gather your arrows into quivers and hang your tools on their hooks. The Master Fletcher blows a small horn 3 times. The signal is clear. The workshop gates swing open, and you step into the golden light of late afternoon. You heft your quiver and feel the familiar weight of your craft. You smell the soft perfume of oiled wood mingled with sweat and sawdust. You breathe deep, knowing that each arrow you fletch here will find its mark in service of crown and kin. And with that promise singing in your chest, you step from the Fletcher's roof into the next chapter of your day. When the Master Fletcher's horn sounds for the second shift, you step back inside and find the light softer now, filtered through dust and feathers floating in the waxy air. The air is warm and heavy with a scent of resin and sawdust. You return to your bench and rest your tool belt at your side. A queasy knot of pride tightens in your chest as you gaze at the row of newly fletched arrows lined along the rack. Each one tells a story of patient carving, of careful trimming, of heated glue that held feathers in place through wind and rain. A fellow archer approaches, grinning beneath his hooded cloak. He holds out a chicken feather he has rescued from the cook's yard. You shake your head at the absurd gift, but accept it and tuck it between two of your best arrows. He claps you on the shoulder and says that a quiver with a chicken plume is good for luck. You laugh and pat his arm in thanks. The workshop hums around you as apprentices run to refill cauldrons of glue and polish ashboards for the next morning's work. You gather 3 arrows and step to the far wall where a straw bale target stands framed by ropes. The Master Fletcher nods, and you nock your first arrow. You aim carefully, breathing out as you draw the string to your cheek. Your wrist pressed snug in the bone brace hums with tension. You release, and the arrow flies true, sinking into the center of the bale with a soft thud. You smile at the reminder that a well-fletched arrow is nearly unstoppable. You retrieve the arrow and inspect the flight path. The feathers are perfectly aligned, and the shaft bears a faint burnish where your hands held it. You place it back in the quiver and repeat the process 4 more times, each shot closer than the last. The Master Fletcher steps forward to examine the arrows in the target, and he nods appreciatively. You feel a warm glow at the back of your ribs. Turning from the target, you drift back to the benches and settle among your comrades to listen, as the Master shares a story from his youth when he fought a skirmish beyond the northern woods and lost half his quiver in a single volley. His voice is low and steady, and everyone leans in to catch each word. You imagine arrows buzzing like angry hornets through a frost mist. He tells of a single perfect shot that turned the battle. When he finishes, you feel the weight of every arrow you have ever nocked. Night falls and torches appear along the rafters. The workshop light flickers gold across your bow and arrows. You sweep a rag over the bench and toss splinters into an ash bucket. You unscrew the lid from a small jar of oil and run a thin film along each shaft to protect the wood from moisture in the spring air. Your fingers move in a rhythm you barely need to think about. You pause when the oil drips from one arrow and wipe it clean with your sleeve. A squire enters carrying a bundle of fresh linen cloth. He lays it out on a new bench and invites you to wrap the ends of your arrows to cushion transport. You cut strips and wind each one tight, knotting the cloth so it cannot loosen. A comrade helps you by holding the arrows steady. Together you finish the task and tuck the wrapped arrows into a leather case marked with your initials. You step back and survey your workbench. Tools are neatly hung, ribbons of wood shavings are swept into a pile, feathers are sorted by size in wooden boxes. For a moment, there is nothing more to do. You lean against the wall and catch your reflection in a polished metal bowl hanging there. Your tunic is streaked with glue and sawdust, and your fingers bear the faint amber stain of resin, but you would not trade this life for all the silks in the manor. Outside the workshop door, your captain waits, flanked by the sergeant and 2 veteran archers. He greets you by name and holds out his hand. You slip your carved arrow case into his palm, and he nods in approval before handing it to his squire. He says that your arrows will be ready for tomorrow's dawn skirmish. You bow your head and feel the surge of pride that comes from crafting something both beautiful and deadly. As you step from the Fletcher's roof into the cool night air, you pause at the threshold. Lanterns glow along the eaves, and snow whispers through the open door. You pull your cloak up and feel the weight of evening settle around you. You glance back once at the workshop where your arrows were born. The memory of wood and feather and fire will carry with you through the trials ahead. You join the column of archers, filing down the yard toward the barracks. Moonlight glints on steel arrowheads, and the silence is punctuated only by the crunch of frost beneath boots. Your heart beats steady in your chest. You will use these arrows tomorrow with skill and purpose. You will stand shoulder to shoulder with your brotherhood sworn to wood and sinew. And when the sun rises, you will draw back your string in perfect unison with the others and send your arrows soaring like thunder through the dawn sky. You step into the courtyard just as the morning mist begins to lift, the first pale light revealing rows of bows resting on wooden racks. You carry your own longbow in one hand and your leather bracer in the other. The bracer is supple but firm, its straps worn soft by countless mornings of use. You slip your forearm through the opening and pull the leather snug, fastening each buckle until the bracer fits like a second skin. It cushions your arm against the bowstring's snap and reminds you that every precaution matters in the life of an archer. With your bracer in place, you turn to the bow rack and lift your ash bow, its limbs curved in a gentle arc honed by your own hands. You cradle it like a chosen companion, running a fingertip along the grain of the wood that gleams with oiled polish. At the center of the bow, you pause to check the knot where bowstring meets limb. The string itself is newly waxed, its fibers dark and smooth, humming with latent energy. You brush your palm along its length and feel the subtle vibration like a purr of promise. You settle into position at the shooting line, planting your feet shoulder-width apart on frost-coated grass. The ground beneath your boots is firm but uneven, a reminder that you must find balance with every shot. You draw an arrow from your quiver, its shaft perfect and fletched with care. You notch the arrow gently against the string and slide your fingers into place. The bow feels alive in your hand, every curve and grain speaking of potential flight. Before drawing back, you glance to your mentor standing a few yards away. He is an older archer named Bram, his silvered hair tied back in a leather thong, his eyes bright with quiet confidence. He watches you with half-raised brow, as though gauging not just your form but your spirit. You give him a small nod, and he returns one of encouragement, the simplest of gestures that steals your focus. You lift the bowstring to your cheek and draw. The bracer presses firmly against your skin, and you feel the tension build in your back muscles. The world narrows to the target ahead, a straw bale painted with concentric rings set against a timber frame. The string hums louder now, a ringing note of stored power. You hold the draw for a heartbeat, your heart beating in time with the string's song, then release. The arrow flies with surprising speed. You watch its plume trace an arch before it thwacks into the bullseye. You exhale and feel the first rush of triumph ignite your chest. Your mentor steps forward and murmurs something you can't hear over the beating of your pulse. You shake out your arm and twist your bracer gently, checking for any pinching or looseness. Everything feels right. You twist back to the rack and pluck another arrow, sliding it into position as you step forward to retrieve your first shot. Bram stands at the edge of the yard, his posture relaxed, his arms folded. You step up to the bale and tap the arrow with respect. Then gather it carefully and pocket it for inspection later. Each arrow is precious, each a promise of accuracy in the chaos of war. You return to the firing line and begin a deliberate routine. Brace, notch arrow, draw, aim, release. With each repetition, you feel your form smooth out. Your shoulders roll into place. Your elbow aligns with bow limb. Your wrist remains firm. The sound of string against leather echoes in your ears, a metronome guiding your rhythm. You find a steady cadence and settle into the flow. Bram walks alongside you, his footsteps soft on the dew-damp grass. He leans in to say a word of advice about loosening your grip just a fraction, or shifting your weight slightly onto your back foot. You adjust, focusing on the subtle change. On your next draw, the arrow splits the line you hit before. You glance at Bram, and he gives a single approving nod. The morning sun climbs higher, and the cold retreats. You feel warmth on your neck through the folds of your tunic. Sweat beads at your brow despite the brisk air. You wipe it away with the back of your hand and let the moisture flick off the brace's smooth surface. You pause to catch your breath, inhaling the scent of pine from nearby woods and the tang of tar from the barracks roof. Across the yard, other archers practice alongside you. Their arrows fly true and false in equal measure, a chorus of thwacks and occasional groans when a shot goes wide. You smile at a comrade whose arrow clatters against the wooden frame. He shrugs and grins, then regains his stance to try again. The camaraderie eases the tension, reminding you that even the finest archer has off days. You rack your bow for a moment and step closer to Bram. He holds out his hand, and you place your bow in his grip. He inspects the string tension and nods. Then he offers his own arrow, pointing at a distant oak stump by the training fence. You retrieve it and step back, bracer and bow at the ready. Bram's presence is steady like the oak itself, grounding you in this moment. You draw and release, your arrow sailing farther than before to embed itself deep in the stump. You hold the follow-through, watching your hand remain steady long after the arrow has left. Bram whistles softly and steps forward to examine the shot. You exhale and let your arms relax, the bracer cushioning the fade of tension in your wrist. Replacing the arrows, you notice a group of new recruits gathering at the edge of the yard, wide-eyed and bundled in cloaks. They stare in awe as Bram calls you over. You step forward, and Bram introduces you as one who has learned to trust the bow as an extension of self. The recruits lean in to listen as Bram asks you to demonstrate the proper draw. You take the bow back into your hand, adjust the string oil with a light swipe to keep it supple, then notch an arrow. You explain the stance as you draw, speaking clearly so the new archers can imagine themselves in your boots. You describe the tension, the release, the follow-through. You let your words flow naturally, each sentence shaped by the morning's practice. Then you fire. The arrow flies straight and true to the oak stump. The recruits murmur, and Bram claps once in appreciation. You catch your breath and turn to face the recruits. Their faces are bright with excitement and nerves. You offer them a nod and withdraw to the firing line so Bram can demonstrate for them. You step back and let Bram take your place, watching as his arrow splits the air. You realize then that today's practice is not just about sharpening your own skill, but about passing it forward. The sun leans past midday when Bram calls a halt. You rack your bow and loosen your bracer straps enough to catch a circulating breeze. Your forearm prickles with relief at the release of pressure. Bram gathers the arrows and nods at you to follow. You step forward with your quiver slung back. Together, you and Bram walk toward the edge of the yard. He claps you on the shoulder with a solid hand. You feel the warmth of his pride and resolve flicker in your chest like a small flame. Today, you have tested your stance and found it true. Today, you have oiled your string and felt its promise hum beneath your fingers. And today, your mentor has seen and approved. You stand before the gate to the barracks. The mist has fully lifted, and the day is clear. You look back once at the targets and the place where arrows puncture straw. Then you face forward. You know the next trial may bring wind and rain, banners and battle, steel and chaos. But you are ready. Your bracer is secure, your bowstring hums with purpose, and your stance is true. You draw a final breath of the crisp morning air and step back into the rhythm of your day. An archer sworn to wood and sinew. You pause at the edge of the practice field, feeling the heat of the midday sun on your back even beneath your cloak. The bracer around your forearm is still snug and protective, its leather smooth where the bowstring snaps against it. You lift your bow once more and turn to face the open expanse before you, targets set at varying distances, each one a promise of skill or a warning of failure. Your mentor Bram stands off to one side, arms folded across his chest. He watches you with the same calm intensity that guided your very first draw. He nods at the outermost target, a small ring painted on a weathered oak stump. You nock an arrow and draw back, testing the tension one last time. The bowstring hums as you settle into your stance. You hold the draw until your muscles tremble and then release. The arrow soars true and lands deep in the center of the ring. You exhale and feel the familiar rush of triumph in your chest. Bram moves toward you and inspects your form. He adjusts your grip slightly, then steps back and gestures at a target just beyond the far wall. Without a word, you accept his challenge. The distance is greater, and the air seems thinner across the field. You nock another arrow, draw with steady resolve, and let it fly. The arrow lands just outside the ring, yet still within the circle of splintered wood. Bram nods and gives a single clap of approval. You retrieve your arrows and continue to practice under Bram's quiet supervision. Each shot hones your skill, each hit builds confidence. You notice the subtle shift in your stance as you draw and release again and again. Your shoulders roll into place, your elbow aligns, and your wrist remains firm. You no longer watch the string slip from your fingers, but follow the arrow's flight with your eyes. After a long series of exercises, Bram calls a halt. You step aside as he gathers the arrows and addresses the assembled archers. You lean in to catch his words of praise for those who showed growth and gentle admonition for those who rushed their shots. When he finishes you, lower your bow and tap your bracer in thanks. Your arm tingles with fatigue, but pride keeps you warm. You hang your bow on its rack and loosen the straps of your bracer. You flex your wrist and feel the leather's imprint on your skin. You wipe the inside of the bracer with a cloth, then hang it beside your bow. Bram offers you a nod that says, "Well done," and you return his greeting with a steady gaze. Inside the hall, the cook serves a hearty stew of barley, root vegetables, and shredded venison. The scent draws you in, and you join your comrades at the long table. You ladle a generous portion into your bowl and spoon a steaming mouthful. The warmth spreads from your belly through your limbs, easing the ache of exertion. Your captain enters and the room falls silent. He calls out the names of those chosen to patrol the eastern woods today. When he names you, a thrill runs through you before settling into a quiet determination. You rise with bowl in hand and follow him outside. In the courtyard, you strap your bracer back into place and sling your bow over your shoulder. The midday sun beats down on you. Your quiver is full and your mind is clear. Ahead lies the forest where duty awaits. You take a deep breath, feel the leather bracer secure against your arm, and step forward into whatever challenges the day may bring. You shoulder your quiver and tighten the straps across your chest as you step into the pale dawn light. The meadow before you glistens with dew, each blade of grass a tiny prism catching the first pale glow of morning. Mist curls around your boots like ghostly fingers, tickling your ankles and mingling with the scent of damp earth and crushed wildflowers. You take a steady breath and feel your heart settle into a measured rhythm. Beside you, a line of pikemen stretches out to either side, their long shafts towering above your head. The pikemen hold their spears upright like a forest of wooden sentinels, their polished steel tips gleaming faintly in the growing light. You glance at their footwork as you march, matching your pace to theirs, your boots sinking slightly into the soft ground. The harmony of your steps creates a muted drumbeat that echoes across the meadow. Your bow rests comfortably against your shoulder, the curve of its ash limbs familiar under the rough wool of your tunic. You run a fingertip along the polished stave, feeling the smooth grain that tells of careful seasoning and steady hand. The leather of your bracer pulls snugly against your forearm, protecting it from the snap of the string when you draw back. You flex your wrist and feel the reassuring hum of tension even before an arrow is nocked. Ahead, the training field unfolds like a green oasis ringed by low hedgerows. Beyond that, you can just make out the outline of the fortress walls rising against the sky. The citadel's towers stand like watchful giants, silent witnesses to every triumph and stumble. You glance upward, imagining the faces of commanders peering down through arrow slits, judging your every move. You straighten your shoulders and lift your chin, determined to meet their gaze with confidence. The pikemen fall into stride behind you, their armor clinking in soft rhythm. You weave through them, your quiver brushing against their shield straps. You exchange nods and startled laughter with comrades whose expressions reflect the same mixture of nerves and resolve. One of them trips over a tuft of grass and nearly falls, only to catch himself with a hand on his pike. You reach out to steady him, and he grins, muttering an apology. Discipline in the field may be rigid, but camaraderie still finds its way. A gentle breeze stirs the mist, sweeping it aside, and revealing patches of emerald moss and clusters of daisies. You hear the distant call of a hawk riding the thermals above the tree line. The bird circles in silent grace, its keen eye surveying the ranks below. You imagine drawing an arrow and sending it skyward to follow that path, but you know today your mark will be something more grounded, targets set in perfect rows at the far edge of the field. Your mentor Bram walks beside you now, his pace as measured as the rest. He carries a shortbow slung over one shoulder and keeps his free hand clasped behind his back. You fall into step with him and catch his eye. He offers you a small nod that speaks volumes. We are nearly ready. His presence is steadying, reminding you that every step has purpose, every breath in service of the next. A pair of halberdiers marches behind Bram, their weapons cutting white arcs against the pale grass. You hear the soft scrape of steel on leather as they adjust the straps of their helmets. Their armor is heavier than yours, their weapons built for close quarters. You feel the contrast between your bow's elegance and their brutal heft. Each weapon has its place on the battlefield, and today you stand beside them as equals in purpose. At the clearing's edge, 2 wooden stakes mark the entrance to the training ground. Beyond lies a long expanse of earth cleared of stones, with rows of straw targets braced against stout posts. You can already glimpse the shadowy outlines of framed silhouettes and circular bales. You swallow to chase away the lump of anticipation in your throat. Today, your arrows will fly farther and faster than ever before. You step forward to lead the line onto the clearing. The pikemen pivot in unison, their pikes brushing past your elbow in a quiet whoosh. You guide your men through the gap, careful that no one's foot catches on exposed roots. The circle tightens as you reach the center of the field. You stand shoulder to shoulder with your comrades, an unbroken wall of bows and bodies ready to train under the open sky. The sergeant steps into the center of the formation, his voice carrying easily over the low rustle of our movement. He calls the roll, and each name echoes out. When your name comes, you step forward to salute. You feel the weight of every arrow in your quiver, and the solid strength of your bow in your hand. The sergeant nods approval and motions toward the first row of targets. You fall into formation before the nearest bale. Your comrades fan out in staggered lines, giving each man room to draw and release without fear of accident. You step up to your mark, plant your feet firmly in the soft earth, and draw your bowstring until it hums with tension. You aim for the center ring and release. The arrow whistles and thwacks into the target. You hold your pose, chest rising and falling, then allow the string to settle. Across the field, dozens of arrows punctuate each target. You hear the soft rustle of linen as archers adjust their stance, the scratch of quills as some retrieve misfired shafts from the ground. Between shots, you exchange quick words of encouragement with the archers next to you. A quiet laughter rises when one of you splits an arrow already lodged in the bale, a feat that earns a wink and a thumbs up. After 5 precise shots, Bram calls for a shift to longer range. You step back and feel the field widen before you. The next bale stands at a distance that once seemed impossible but now beckons as a worthy challenge. You nock another arrow, draw deep, and let it fly. The shaft arcs across the field in a perfect curve and sinks in nearly at the edge. You exhale in relief and ready your next shot, heart pounding with exhilaration. The session continues with running drills, drawn-out holds, and precision tasks. You sweat beneath your tunic even in the cool air, but the burn is welcome. Each shot builds skill. Each breath brings focus. By the time Bram signals the end of the exercise, your arms ache with fatigue, but your spirit soars with accomplishment. As the line breaks and you hand over your arrows for collection, you feel the glow of pride in every muscle. You gather your bow and quiver and stand among the pikemen once more. You share quiet smiles and knowing nods. No words are needed to convey what you all have proven, that each of you carries skill and strength into the day's trials. You march back across the dew-slick meadow, the mist drifting away like a curtain drawn back on a new act. The fortress towers loom closer now, promising warmth and respite. Your footsteps fall in steady rhythm, and your mind remains clear, anticipation replaced by quiet confidence. Today you tested your skill and emerged stronger. Today you marched to the training field with bow in hand and lived to tell the tale. You step onto the edge of the training ground as Bram signals the start of the second session. The targets stand waiting like silent sentinels, straw bales propped against wooden posts at measured intervals. Each bale bears concentric rings painted in faded red and blue, bull's eyes that promise both glory and mockery. You heft your bow and nock an arrow, settling into position with feet planted hip-width apart. Ahead lies your challenge. Your first task is a simple volley drill meant to build speed over precision. At Bram's shout, you draw and release in rapid succession. Arrow after arrow whistles through the air and thunks into the nearest bale. Your arm hums with exertion, but you let the bow string fly from your fingers without pausing. Around you, other archers match your pace, the field alive with the thunder of flying shafts. You count 5 shots, then step aside as Bram calls time. You jog forward to gather your arrows. You crouch by the bale, unhooking each shaft from the straw. Some lean at odd angles. One lies broken, splinters sharp as glass. Your finger pricks on a jagged edge and you curse softly, careful not to draw Bram's ire. You press a scrap of cloth to the nick and move on, collecting the rest. Bending back upright, you eye the next target farther down the line and feel anticipation stir. Bram calls you forward. He pats the stout oak stump marking the 50-pace line. You step up and gauge the distance. A hearty gust swirls low across the field, ruffling grass and tugging at cloaks. Bram warns you about wind drift and hands you a fresh arrow. You draw back, lofting the shaft into the air as you compensate for the breeze. You release and watch the arrow curve just enough to land well within the central ring. Bram nods his approval and steps to his own mark. Your next drill tests endurance. You will hold the full draw for as long as you can bear before releasing. You notch an arrow and draw to your anchor point. Your cheekbone presses the string and your elbow lifts in alignment. Bram begins counting heartbeats and you tally each in your mind. 1, 2, 3, and your back quivers. 5, 10, and your arms tremble. 15, and sweat beads at your temple. 20, and your breath hitches. By 30, your muscles scream. You force yourself to hold one more heartbeat, then let the string snap home. The arrow sails true and lands dead center. You sag with relief and feel every fiber of your arms relax. Bram claps once, then they march you to the next station. There, a line of wooden silhouettes stands like a row of invisible foes. You are to practice quick draw under pressure. At Bram's signal, you spring your bow from its rest rack, notch, draw, aim, release. You repeat the sequence with frantic urgency until the silhouettes bristle with arrows. Nearby, one archer fumbles his arrow under stress, curses, and finds his hand shaking too badly to aim straight. You offer a nod of respect when he finally lands a shot. The drill pushes each of you past routine comfort and deeper into muscle memory born of necessity. By midday, the sun beats hot on your neck. Dew has dried from the meadow but leaves you dust clinging to boots and tunic. You jog back to the fountain for water, ducking beneath a low beam and filling your flask. The cold liquid soothes your parched throat and dribbles down your forearm. You catch sight of your reflection in the rippling surface and see dirt streaked on your cheek and sweat darkening your hair. You splash more water on your face and step back into the fray. The next exercise is volley fire in unison. You and your comrades form 3 staggered ranks. At the first whistle, you notch and draw. At the second whistle, you release. The result is a single pulse of silver shafts arcing across the field, the sound like rain on a tin roof. You feel the unity in that single breath, and release, the knowledge that you fight together or fall together. When your volley lands, you step forward to retrieve arrows and see the perfect fusillade across 3 bales. Bram allows a rare smile, and the line breaks into a ripple of pride. Then comes the group target. A single, larger bale stands at the far end. Each of you must fire at the same mark, a tight group that proves focus and discipline. You grip your bow and steady your breathing. You draw and release 5 arrows in quick succession. Each one lands within inches of the last. A cluster of identical impacts that glints in the sun. You feel the quiet thrill of mastery in that moment. Bram shifts to one-on-one challenges. You are paired with Ulrich, a veteran known for lightning speed. You stand side by side at his mark and prepare for a timed clash. On Bram's command, you both draw and fire. You release first, but Ulrich lands his arrow at the exact same instant. You chuckle and bow in respect. He returns the gesture, and you feel the sting of healthy rivalry. Next, he places a small wooden bucket at an odd angle above the ground. You are to strike the bucket rim with a single arrow. This is a test of precision and nerve. You step up, eyeing the tiny target, and draw. You let the arrow fly and hear it ring the bucket as clearly as a dinner bell. You grin to see the empty bucket swing. Bram claps once, then motions you to try again. This time you strike the bucket dead center. You allow yourself brief triumph before the next challenge. Finally, Bram calls a halt and gathers you around for a debrief. He commends you on your group volleys and your bucket strikes. He notes that your endurance held through the drills and that your form remained true even under fatigue. He offers a reminder. Archery demands not only strength of arm, but calm of mind. He warns that a single errant arrow on the battlefield could cost lives. You nod, mindful of the gravity behind each practice arrow loosed today. As the session ends, you feel the ache of exertion in every muscle. You space your boots carefully over the uneven ground as you line up to hand in your arrows. Apprentices collect them, checking shafts and fletching for damage. You step aside and unstrap your bracer. Your forearm tingles where the leather guarded you from abrasion. You flex your wrist and rub the inside of the bracer to ease the imprint. With tools returned, you and the archers march back across the dewless meadow. The fortress walls rise closer now. A column of archers in step, each of you bearing the physical evidence of the day's drill-dirt-streaked tunics, stiff arms, and proud faces. You catch Ulrich's eye in passing and exchange a nod of respect. The camaraderie forged in shared struggle binds you tighter than any oath. Approaching the barracks entrance, you uncoil your bow and slide it into its rack. You lay your arrows in the quiver slot with care. The armory doors close behind you with a soft thud. Inside, the hearth flames crackle, and the cook ladles a thick stew of barley, root vegetables, and salted pork into bowls. The scent warms your nostrils and draws you forward. You sit at the long table, elbowing aside the dust of straw and sawdust, and take a steaming spoonful. The rich broth slides down your throat and rekindles your strength. Your comrades share stories of morning feats and misfires. Laughter rattles the rafters. You lean back, bowl in hand, tasting each moment of warmth in body and spirit. Today, you marched to the training field, with bow in hand, and returned having tested not only your skill, but your resolve and your bond with your brothers in arms. As the stew empties, your hunger settles with a sense of quiet pride. You know tomorrow you will march again, and your bow will sing once more across the dawn sky. The pale light of dawn creeps across the training field as you stand ready at the firing line, bow in hand and arrows at the ready, the grass beneath your boots still slick with overnight dew. Your sergeant, A stern veteran whose voice carries authority even in silence stands a few paces away, arms folded and eyes narrowed in appraisal. Around you, your comrades line up, each one poised like a coiled spring, every heartbeat echoing the promise of what is to come. You draw your first arrow from the quiver, its shaft smooth and its fletching crisp, the faint tang of resin still clinging to your fingertips. You notch the arrow with practiced ease, sliding the nock into place and pressing the feather against the string, feeling the mild resistance beneath your fingertip. You raise the bow to your cheek, pressing the string into the familiar spot just below your eye. The wood feels cool against your palm, its grain whispering tales of countless mornings just like this one, of hours spent perfecting each draw and release. You inhale slowly, filling your lungs with the chill of the air, and release your breath as you pull the string back until it presses against the smooth curve of your jaw. Your back muscles tighten in concert with the tension of the string, your elbow rising in perfect alignment with the bow limb. For a moment, time stops, and you exist only in the space between draw and release, your senses honed to the faintest hum of the bowstring and the distant caw of a raven circling overhead. Then you let go. The string snaps forward with a crisp note that rings across the field like a herald announcing your intent. The arrow flies in a perfect arc, a silent messenger until it strikes the target's straw center with a soft but certain thwack. You hear the impact as though it were a drumbeat, and feel a surge of pride pulsing through your veins. You hold your pose until the arrow settles fully, before releasing your bow arm and letting the weapon hang at your side. You watch as the arrow quivers in the straw, and steady yourself for the next shot. Your sergeant nods imperceptibly, a small sign of approval that means more than any shouted praise. You return to the line and draw another arrow, your movement smooth and deliberate as you prepare for shot number 2. You plant your feet firmly, engaging your core to steady the shake of exertion from the first release. With a deep breath you draw again, your arm a taut arc of strength, the bowstring a bridge between you and the target. As you let go, the arrow sails true once more, slipping into the bullseye just above the last one. You allow yourself a fleeting smile before you pluck the next arrow from your quiver and ready it at the rest. The rhythm falls into place quickly. Draw, release, retrieve. Draw, release, retrieve. Each cycle refining your form and sharpening your focus. Around you, your fellow archers find their own cadences. Some arrows landing with satisfying precision, others barely grazing the outer rings. But today is your day for practice, your day to push yourself further than before. You remind yourself that every shot counts not only against the target, but also against doubt and distraction. Each arrow is a testament to the mornings spent at this same field. The sore muscles, the stiff joints, the flicker of frustration when a shot goes wide. Today, those lessons converge in the quiet glory of mastery. After 10 arrows, your arm begins to tremble, the strain of drawing the bowstring over and over again, leaving its mark in the fine shake that ripples down your forearm. You steady yourself with a breath and glance at the target. 9 of 10 arrows rest in a tight grouping. The 10th lies just outside the red ring, but still within clear range. You nod at the sergeant, as if to say you are ready for his next instruction, and he steps forward to inspect your work. He lifts a hand and places it against the grouping, then traces the faint scratches where shafts have pierced the straw. He steps back and gives a curt smile. You bow your head in gratitude. He beckons you to step forward to the 50 paces line, a distance that once felt impossible, but now seems like the next logical test. You march to the new mark, your companions parting to make way, and take your place on the hard-packed earth. The wind has picked up slightly, stirring the mist into spirals that drift across the field. You steady your bow, checking the alignment of each arrow knocking point, and adjust your aim to account for the breeze. Then you draw and release. The arrow sails high and arcs gently downward, striking the target with the same telling thwack. A murmur ripples through the watchers. You grin at the unexpected compliment carried on their breaths. The sergeant calls out a variation. You are to fire 3 arrows in under 6 seconds, testing both speed and precision. You quarter your feet, taking care not to stumble on the uneven stones, and count the sequence in your mind. When he raises his gauntleted hand, you notch your first arrow. When he brings it down, you draw, aim, and release with mechanical efficiency. The first arrow flies, the second follows in an instant, and the third slides out just as the string hums back in place. All 3 land within a ring of 10 inches. You feel the adrenaline burn warm in your chest. The sergeant's eyes flash with approval. You might have broken his expectations for a moment. You step back to collect your arrows, turning each in your hands before returning it to your quiver. The next drill is aimed at endurance under fatigue. You will draw to full tension and hold until the sergeant's whistle sounds. You draw and lock the string against your jaw, holding as beads of sweat form at your temples. Your muscles tremble at 10 seconds, quake at 15, and burn at 20. You steel yourself against the voice in your head, urging you to let go. But you hold until the whistle finally pierces the air, and then you release with a guttural exhale. The arrow flies high and true, despite the strain. You collapse to one knee for a moment and let the world settle around you. Moments later, you stand and march back to the firing line. Your arms feel heavy, as if they belong to someone else. Your bracer rubs at the small abrasion above your wrist, but you ignore it because every ache today has been earned. You nock the final arrow, and, with the same care you used for your very first shot, you draw, aim, and release. The arrow thunks into the center of the straw bale, as though guided by purpose itself. Your sergeant steps forward once more. He bows his head in respect and offers a curt nod that might pass for rare praise. Your back straightens at the gesture. All around you, your fellows clap quietly and exchange words of admiration. You lean on your bow for a moment, breathing in the scent of freshly oiled wood and warmed leather. The morning's chill has given way to a comfortable warmth that seeps into your bones. You step from the firing line and approach the sergeant. He inspects your bow and knocks, running a finger along the string where the oil has dried. He checks the fletching and smiles just enough to soften his stern features. He places a hand on your shoulder and says that today you have proven yourself one to watch, one who combines skill and discipline in equal measure and will serve your company well in battle. You bow your head and muster your most respectful thanks. You grip the bow in both hands, feeling its solid assurance. As the sergeant turns to give further instructions, you slip your arm from your bracer, flex your wrist, and rub the small welt where the leather has protected you. You slide the bracer back on and fasten the straps with deliberate care, a small ritual of readiness. Your comrades gather around to share tales of their own triumphs and misfires. You join the circle, leaning on your bow as you listen and laugh. The day is young, but already feels full of promise, born of shared mastery. You glance toward the training yard where tomorrow's sun will rise, and see the target bales shimmering in the early light. You know that when you stand there again, you will draw with the same steady purpose. For now, you sheathe your arrows and return your bow to its rack. The sergeant dismisses the line with a simple nod. You step back and allow the next archer to take your place. You cross the field with a lighter step than before, carrying in your heart the echo of each thwack against straw, each arrow shaped by your hand. The morning's practice has forged not only your skill, but your spirit. When tomorrow dawns, you will meet it at full draw. You return to the yard just as the sun beginning to rise paints the sky in pale shades of orange and pink. The dew has dried to dust at your boots, and the air holds the promise of a crisp, clear morning. Your sergeant stands beside a long wooden track that has been set up for moving target practice. Flatboards hang from ropes and run along the track as 2 apprentices pull them steadily back and forth. Each board bears a painted bullseye that drifts across the field like a restless spirit. This is your next trial in mastering marksmanship. You step forward and claim the firing line once more. You notch an arrow and draw your bow, feeling the same familiar tension in your back muscles. The sergeant gives a wordless nod and swings a hand toward the track. The target glides into view. You inhale and release in one fluid motion. The arrow whistles through the cool air and finds the target's center ring even as it drifts. You barely dare to believe it until you hear the soft crack of impact. You hold your pose long enough for the sergeant to see, then release and step aside. Your comrades move up to retrieve their arrows. You join them, bending to pull your shaft free from the moving board. The wood quivers where your arrow pierced it but holds its shape. You inspect the fletching and smile when you see no splintering. You return to the firing line with steady steps, tightening your grip on the bow stave. You feel your heart thrumming in time with the target's passage, your breath controlled by the memory of that successful shot. Next, the sergeant calls for group fire on moving targets. Archers line up shoulder to shoulder. You count the ranks and take your place in the second row. You watch as the targets begin to drift at varying speeds and heights. Your sergeant raises his hand and the signal is given. You notch and draw at the same moment as dozens of other bows hum in unison. The sound is like distant thunder. You aim for one board as it glides past and release. Your arrow sails straight and thunks through the painted ring. You dare to look at the surrounding bales, and that most of your comrades have landed true as well. When the exercise ends, you march forward again to gather your arrows. The grass beneath your feet is stained with broken shafts and scattered fletching. You pick up each arrow with care, brushing it free of dirt before placing it back in your quiver. The sergeant observes your methodical pace and nods his approval. You realize that in archery, as in life, caution and respect for your tools matter as much as raw strength. The dawn light grows stronger. You wipe sweat from your brow, even in the cool air. You swap a few words with a comrade, teasing him about the tiny chip in his arrow shaft. He grins and points out a divot in your bracer. You both laugh briefly before getting back to your bows. The laughter lightens the weight of the morning's rigors and reminds you why you train alongside these men. The sergeant steps forward to demonstrate a new challenge. He stands near a wooden silhouette carved in the shape of a horse and rider. He explains that on the battlefield, cavalry is the greatest threat to unprotected archers. You must practice targeting a moving figure that represents a mounted foe. The silhouette is dragged along a line and treks slowly past each firing station. Archers take turns. You watch several men fire. Some arrows glance off the wood. Others hit too low or too high. Your turn comes, and you feel the surge of anticipation. You notch and draw and wait until the silhouette crests your line of sight. You release and see the arrow strike just below the rider's hand. You allow yourself a small nod of satisfaction. The silhouette swings by again, and you step aside as another archer takes aim. You notice the subtle shift in the sergeant's posture when you hit your mark. He tightens his jaw and watches the arrow quiver. You step back and catch your breath while the next man fires. Soon the sun climbs above the wall and the shadows shrink underfoot. The sergeant calls for a final test of precision. You will split your own arrow with a follow-up shot. He places an arrow in the target stump so that its haft protrudes. You must strike that protruding haft dead center. You step up with careful reverence. You notch a fresh arrow and draw slowly, focusing on the very tip of your first arrow. Your vision narrows. You feel the world contracting to that single point. You release. You hear the split exactly as you hoped. The target rings with a sharp crack that rings through your ears like a bell. You stand frozen for a moment as the sergeant strides forward to inspect the shot. He runs a hand over the two shafts, fixed in perfect alignment. He looks to you and gives a single curt clap, a rare show of approval. Your comrades break into cheers. You bow your head in respect and wipe your hand across your brow. By mid-morning, the drill concludes. You breathe in the scent of freshly turned earth and warmed leather. You rack your bow and loosen your braces straps. Your forearm is tender where the leather protected you from friction. You flex your wrist and feel the light ache of exertion. It feels good. As the archers march back to the barracks, you fall in with your company. You rest your bow across your shoulder and sway in rhythm with the steady steps. The fortress towers loom overhead like silent overseers. You carry in your heart the echo of every thwack you earned this morning. The mastery of marksmanship feels like both a personal triumph and a bond between you and your comrades. You know that on the battlefield your skill will mean the difference between life and death for the men standing beside you. You cross the courtyard and enter the armory. You hand your bow to the quartermaster, who inspects it and nods. You place your arrows in the rack and remove your bracer. You rub your arm where the leather met skin. You feel the residual warmth of effort lingering like a proud memory. Beyond the armory, cooks prepare a meal of salted pork and coarse bread. The scent of sizzling meat beckons you. You step into the hall and join your brothers at the long table. You scoop a generous portion of pork onto your plate and tear off a chunk of bread. You chew slowly, savoring the taste of simple sustenance earned by skill and discipline. As you eat, you share the morning's highlights. You recount each split arrow, each moving target you struck, and the pride in the sergeant's rare smile. Your comrades laugh and toast your name. You feel the strength of camaraderie binding you tighter than any oath. Outside the hall, the sun burns away the last wisps of morning mist. The training field awaits fresh recruits and another round of practice. You know that tomorrow's dawn will bring new challenges, and that you will meet them with the same steady bow and unwavering focus. For now, though, you rest in the warmth of shared triumph and the sure knowledge that this morning you mastered marksmanship at first light. As the last light of day drains from the sky, you and your comrades gather around the campfire, settling on logs and crates scorched black by countless flames. You pass the flask of spiced wine hand to hand, feeling the warmth of embers on your faces even before you take a sip. The wine is heady and sweet with cinnamon and cloves, and it sends a pleasant rush through your chest. Around you, the fire spits and pops, and the night air fills with smoke and the scent of pine needles. One by one, each archer leans forward to share a tale. The first voice is low and gravelly, from years of shouting commands under wind and sun. He describes the moment he split an arrow already lodged in a straw bale. He speaks of the thunder in his arm and the roar of the crowd that followed him back to the barracks. His eyes gleam as he recounts that flawless shot, and he raises his flask in mock salute to himself before passing it on. The next man tells of a frostbitten dawn when he misjudged the draw weight of his own bow and nearly lost his wrist to recoil. He laughs at the memory of the sergeant shaking his head and the apprentice healer swearing under her breath as she wrapped his arm in linen soaked in goat fat. You all laugh with him at the absurdity of bleeding into your own gear before you could even learn the secret trick of a proper grip. A third archer speaks in a whisper that draws everyone close. He claims he once blind fired an arrow through the narrow gap of a castle arrow slit, hitting an enemy scout who had dared peek over the battlements. The crack of wood and the thud of a body hitting stone are his punchline, and you feel a thrill at the thought of such an impossible shot. He swears that the scout never even saw the arrow until it was too late. Then, it is your turn. You clear your throat and share your own near miss, the time you aimed at a charging warhorse, only to have the arrow glance off a piece of untested plate mail. The arrow skittered across the ground, and you tumbled face first into the mud, your bowstring snapping against your cheek. You chuckle at the memory of muddy taste on your lips and the mocking laughter of pikemen who refuse to let you live it down. You end with a flourish, describing how you recovered that same arrow and used it in your next volley as though nothing had happened. Laughter swells around the fire as the flask makes its way back to you. You refill your cup and breathe deep. The crackling flames cast dancing shadows across weathered faces and leather worn from years of service. You pass the flask to a young apprentice who still trembles at the weight of his first bow. He raises it to his lips and looks uncertain until you clap him on the shoulder and nod encouragement. He swallows, and the heat of the wine floods his eyes. For a moment he glows with confidence before handing the flask onward. A quiet voice breaks the mirth. It belongs to the oldest archer in your company, whose sight has dimmed but whose aim remains deadly. He shares a secret trick of the trade. the subtle twist of the wrist that spins the arrow into a stable flight path, even in crosswinds. You lean forward to catch every syllable, mindful of how many times that knowledge might save your life. He traces the motion in the air with sinewy fingers, and the flames light up the lines of age on his hands. Others follow with their own secrets. A sidelong step to adjust angle on a mounted target, or the way to moisture-proof your fletching by applying a thin coat of boiled mutton fat before battle. They trade these small facts like precious coins, each one learnt through blood and sweat and narrow escapes. Every secret shared is met with nods of respect and a low hum of appreciation. Between tales you hear the night stir at the edge of camp. A lone owl calls its mournful song. Somewhere behind the line of tents, a sentry shifts his weight and coughs. The fire crackles louder, and the circle of warmth feels like its own world apart from the dangers beyond. You sip the wine and feel the bond in your chest as strong as any arrow shaft. A final story comes from Bram, your mentor. He speaks of the time he guided a single arrow through the eye slit of an enemy helmet on a moonless night. He credits it not to blind luck, but to years of repetition, of drawing his bow until his muscles burned and his vision blurred, of waking before dawn to practice alone in damp fields. He reminds you that mastery is earned one arrow at a time. His voice is soft, yet his words carry weight. As his tale ends, there is a hush. You all sit in quiet awe, feeling the crackle of inspiration in the air. You lift your flasks together in a silent salute to the fallen and to the thrill of another dawn spent honing your craft. The embers cool and the night grows colder, but no one stirs to leave. You all remain seated in that ring of firelight, trading stories, laughter, wisdom, forging bonds that will carry you through battles and beyond. You know that when duty calls tomorrow, you will rise together, bow in hand, hearts steady, fueled by the shared stories that remind you why you chose the life of an archer. You slip from the camp as the sky faintly brightens, the last stars fading above a horizon of dark pines. Your breath hangs in the chill air in ghostly puffs while the hounds pad behind you, their paws silent on the thick carpet of pine needles. Dew clings to every leaf and twig, each droplet catching the dim light like scattered jewels. You move with deliberate stealth, every muscle alert, every sense sharpened beyond the rigors of battle drills. The forest feels alive in the half-light, each rustle hinting at hidden life, each bird call a warning or invitation. Your hounds press their noses against the ground, tongues lolling as they sample scents borne on the damp breeze. Their low baying grows more insistent, a living thread drawing you deeper into the woods. You follow where they lead, careful to step on soft moss rather than dry sticks that might betray your presence with a snap. The earthy aroma of damp soil and fallen needles fills your nostrils, grounding you in the moment. Midnight blue mist curls around the trunks of ancient firs, weaving between roots like drifting serpents. In this hushed cathedral, you feel both small and profoundly attuned. You ease to a halt beside a pale birch and draw your bow from its rack at your back. You nock a single arrow tipped with gleaming steel, the balance and curve of the shaft familiar under your practiced fingers. The hounds freeze beside you, jowls quivering and eyes bright with anticipation. You lift your gaze to the still forest floor, scanning for movement. A fallen log lies just ahead, its mossy underside perhaps a hiding place for a startled hare or the first glimpse of a grazing deer. You still your heartbeat until the only sound is the labored pant of your companion hounds. A sudden flicker of pale brown catches your eye beside a stand of oaks. A young doe lifts her head as if sensing danger, ears pricked and nostrils flaring. You shift your weight to 1 foot, bow drawn to full tension, arrow resting solidly on the string. Your fingers settle into the knot groove, and you inhale deeply. The doe takes a careful step forward, and then another, until she stands within range. The world narrows to that single animal, its large, dark eyes reflecting dawn's first light. You release the string, and the arrow flies in a perfect arc, the whisper of it cutting through the quiet. The doe leaps and bounds a short distance before faltering. then collapsing softly into the pine needles. The hounds surge forward, gentle in their eagerness as they surround the fallen animal and check its condition. You lower your bow and approach, heart pounding with the thrill of the hunt. You place a hand on the doe's flank in respect for the life taken and murmur a silent thanks for the meat that will feed your comrades. You kneel and extract the arrow from the doe's shoulder, testing the sharpness of the blade against soft fur. Blood seeps freely as you inspect the wound to ensure it was quick and clean. The hounds retreat obediently when you gesture and settle quietly by your side. You offer the led hound a soft word of praise, then turn to field dress the animal. You work swiftly, cutting through sinew and flesh with practiced precision, mindful of both respect and necessity. The spring water in your flask rinses your knife blade between each motion. Once the deer is properly prepared, you pack the meat in cloths and secure it across your back. You stand and dust pine needles from your tunic. The hounds circle you in small arcs, noses twitching eagerly at the fresh scent of blood and meat. You offer each a scrap of tendon, which they accept with delighted crunching. Their tails wag in satisfaction, and you feel a swell of pride in their loyalty and skill. You pat their heads and thank them for their sharp noses and steadfast presence. You turn and set your course back toward camp, the morning light strengthening with every step. You guide the hounds along a narrow deer trail you know will lead you past clearings where rabbits feed and birds feed their young. The dew has lifted from their nests, and you walk more calmly now that the thrill of the chase has passed. The forest greets you in soft shafts of golden light that slip through the canopy, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The world feels whole and balanced, the rite of the hunt completed with both honor and necessity. As you near the edge of the tree line, you glimpse your comrades gathered around the fire, faces bright with curiosity and hunger. You call a greeting, and the hounds bound ahead, tongues lolling. Your captain strides forward with a wide grin and helps you shoulder the deer. You lead the way back to the hearth where knives and spits await, knowing this kill will nourish bodies and spirits alike. Around the crackling flames, your comrades raise their mugs in salute to the hunt and to your skill. You fill your own cup with foaming ale and toast to the hounds whose noses never fail and to the woods that provide. You settle down with the first warm bites of roasted venison while the hounds lie at your feet, their sides rising and falling in contented sleep. You feel bone-deep satisfaction in the rhythm of camp life after the forest's quiet intensity. Stories rise around you once more, laughter and shared respect, binding you closer than any shield wall. In that moment, you know that mastering the bow is only part of being an archer. The hunt is a test of patience, stealth, reverence, and trust in both your own skill and the loyal heart of the hounds at heel. You climb the steep stone steps to the battlements, just as the dawn light breaks over the eastern ridge. Your boots strike the flagstones with a muted echo. The air is cold, thick with the scent of wet moss and smoke from the cooking fires below. You shoulder your quiver and take your place along the crenellated wall, peering down into the dry moat where the enemy ranks are massing. Across the yawning gap you see banners snapping in the breeze, and the glitter of steel helmets like a field of metal lilies. At your shoulder, your sergeant gives a nod. He stands tall in his chainmail, his face grim with focus. A trumpet call rises from the courtyard, and your comrades stiffen. You reach back and draw a single arrow, holding it at the ready. Your fingers brush the fletching, and you feel the tension of training mornings and long hours practiced on distant fields. You remember every lesson learned, every ache endured, every arrow that found its mark. Today that hard work will be tested. The enemy begins to advance. Dust billows from the churned earth of the approach ramp, and you hear the dull thud of wooden shields meeting shield as they form a shield wall. The foot soldiers march as one, their boots thumping in unison. You draw your bow across your chest, settling its grip into the crook of your arm. One by one, your comrades nock their arrows, each shaft clicking into place on the string. The battlement becomes a line of silent sentinels, poised to unleash rain. Your sergeant raises his arm. You draw your string back to your anchor point, your elbow lifting in perfect alignment, your cheek resting against the stock. You steady your breath. You fix your gaze on the grouping of enemy pikemen marching closest to the moat. When the sergeant's arm falls, you release. Hundreds of arrows sing at once, and the sky darkens with black shafts. The impact comes in a thunder of bodies staggering, shields splintering, and a sharp crack of steel on stone as a few stray arrows clang against the wall below. You see the enemy line falter. A rider plunges into the shallow water of the moat, horse and man struggling. Across the gap, an uproar of pain and confusion rises. You let your bow arm drop and draw a fresh arrow, eyes alight. The foot soldiers are quick to recover, but not quick enough to close the distance before your next volley arrives. You draw, aim at a grouping of shield bearers, and release. The shafts rain down in a deadly arc. You hear the low groan of metal bending, and the sharp scream of men wounded by flying steel. Shouts ring out from below as ladders are thrown against the wall and grappling hooks clatter against stone. Footmen strain to heave themselves up over the parapet. You pivot along the wall to face the new threat. Your sergeant barks orders, and you knock arrow again. You step back from the wall's edge and sight up the beam of your bow. You exhale and let the arrow fly. It finds the shoulder of a man halfway up a ladder, sending him tumbling into the moat with a muffled splash. Along the wall, your fellows send another wave of arrows. The air fills with whistling steel, and the wall shakes as spears jab blindly through the crenels. You feel the tremor in the stone and grip your bow tighter as you prepare for a third barrage. Your heart pounds, but your aim remains true. You draw deep and release in a single motion that feels almost dreamlike. You strike the haft of a battering ram, poised at the gate, splintering the wood and tipping the machine off balance. Between volleys, the enemy retreats to regroup. You seize the moment to catch your breath and gather the spent arrows littering the wall walk. You share a quick nod with the archer beside you who hands back your first shaft. You inspect the fletching and nock it without ceremony. Every arrow counts in this fight. You wipe sweat from your brow, though the morning chill lingers in your bones. Then the enemy charges the gate with fresh fury, drums beating and horns blasting. You brace yourself as the sergeant raises his hand once more. You draw your bow from its mid-morning stiffness, feeling the wood spring to life in your hand. You settle your feet shoulder-width apart and draw to full tension. You pick out the largest mass of enemies breaking from beneath their banner. You release. The arrow sails and pierces the captain's tabard, sending him reeling. His men slow and look to each other with uncertainty. The roar of your own war cry rises along the battlement, and you feel it in your chest. It is the sound of unity and resolve. You draw a fresh arrow, place it on the string, and join in the chant that echoes from soldier to soldier along the wall. The enemy's momentum stalls beneath the wave of steel and defiance. You release arrow after arrow, each shot falling true, each impact a blow to their courage. Clangs of steel that once threatened your fortress now ring hollow in the enemy ranks. When the last of the bowstrings loosens, you and your company stare across the moat and see the battered remains of the assault. Bodies lie scattered, shields abandoned, horses whinnying in panic. A few wounded soldiers limp away under blood-stained cloaks. The once proud advance has become a broken rout. The trumpets of defeat faintly echo in the distance. Your sergeant lowers his arm and strides up to you. He clasps you by the shoulder and offers a rare smile. Around him, your fellows gather, faces flushed with exertion and triumph. You rest your bow under your arm, chest heaving. You hear the distant call for archers to stand down and return to the queue for fresh arrows. You stand atop the wall as the sun breaks free of the morning haze, bathing your fortress in warm light. You feel the smooth curve of your bow at your side and the weight of every arrow you loosed in defense of stone and hearth. The castle walls have held, and the enemy's advance has been broken. You share a glance with your brothers in arms and feel the bond of shared victory and survival. When you finally step down from the battlement, you carry the echo of each thwack against straw targets in your bones. Today, your training has saved lives and kept the ramparts intact. You pass the spent arrows to the blacksmith's apprentice who will bend and sharpen them anew. You march back into the courtyard with your head held high, your spirit lifted by the roar of your own war cry and the knowledge that you have truly earned your place among the defenders of the realm. You and your comrades return from the wall to the courtyard as the sun climbs higher and the weight of battle settles into your bones. Your shoulders ache from the repeated draw of the bow, and your palms sting from gripping cords and clutching arrows. You gather near a low smoking brazier where the cook has kept some water warm throughout the morning. Your sergeant nods to the armorer's apprentice, who passes out small wooden bowls filled with warm herb-infused oil and jars of sticky honey salve. You sink onto a rough bench beside the granary wall and unwrap the woolen sling that has supported your shoulder. You rotate your arm in slow circles until the joint loosens with soft pops. A comrade does the same beside you, and you trade a weary grin. The scent of pine resin and lavender drifts from the oil as you pour a little into your palm. You plunge a finger into the warm liquid and rub it gently against the knots in your rotator cuff until the tension eases and the heat seeps in. Next, you peel back the leather straps that have protected your hands from rope burn and pick up a small cloth bundle filled with crushed comfrey leaves and a whisper of thyme. You dip it into the honey salve and press it against the reddened skin on your palm where the friction has raised angry bumps. The cool sweetness of the honey calms the burn and the herbs lend their healing properties. You press for a moment, then wrap the bundle in a linen strip to keep it in place. Your fingertips tingle as the salve works its way into each blistered crease. Your companion leans over to examine your bandage, then offers to trade salve for a different patch of oil. You agree without hesitation because his blend of calendula and rue is famed for speeding recovery. He applies it generously to your forearm, and your arm sighs with relief. You return the favor by offering some balm to his wrist. His thanks comes with a laugh and a promise to bring you an extra ration of hard cheese later. You rise unsteadily and flex each finger in turn. The sting of fresh salve mixes with the ache of old wounds. You shake out your mitts and watch as a few comrades gather in a circle to loosen stiff backs and calves. One man stands in the center and leads simple stretches while another recites a bawdy rhyme set to a jaunty tune. Laughter ripples through the group as arms and legs bend beyond expectation and socks drop off to slip on muddy soles. Soon you return to the brazier for more oil and salve. The armorer's apprentice passes out thin whetstones soaked in vinegar so you can sharpen nicks in your arrowheads before the next volley. You run the stone along each blade, then rinse in water from a wooden bucket. The air fills with the sharp scent of steel and vinegar. You test each arrow by pressing lightly against the heel of your palm to ensure the tip holds firm. Satisfied, you slip the arrows back into your quiver, taking care to realign each fletching so your shots remain true. Across the courtyard, a young recruit fumbles with his sling, accidentally spilling part of the oil jar. The liquid seeps into the straw floor, eliciting a groan from the man who will likely scrub the area later. You step over the spilled patch and pat the recruit on the shoulder with a grin. He flushes, but cracks a smile in return, relieved by your easy camaraderie. Your sergeant strides over with 2 mugs of watered wine. He hands one to you and raises his own in salute. "Well earned," he says, his gravelly voice soft with respect. You drink deeply and feel the cool wine soothe your throat. You offer the mug around and each archer takes a turn, nodding thanks as they pass it on. Between sips, you and your mates share stories of the day's highlights and blunders. One man proudly recounts striking the battery ram beam as it creaked against the gate. Another shrugs and admits his own arrows barely cleared the battlement before dropping uselessly into the moat. You all howl with laughter at his sheepish grin and clapping hands. A hush falls when the armorer arrives with a tray of warm porridge spiced with honey and chopped dates. You take a bowl and scrape the soft grains off the edge, mindful that every crumb is earned and never wasted. You chew slowly, tasting the sweetness against the lingering tang of metal and sweat. The porridge fills your belly without weighing you down, and the dates lend a bright note that chases away the numbness in your hands. As you eat, you gaze up at the battlements where the next watch will soon take their place. You feel the pain in your shoulders again, but temper it with pride. Every ache is proof of your service and your skill. The sun warms your back as you lean forward to scrape the last of the porridge from your bowl. When the meal is done, you and your comrades rise together, hands still tender under fresh bandages. You flex your shoulders slowly, ensuring each joint moves freely. You let the salve soak in a moment longer before you slide your armor back on. The leather straps snap into place without pinching, and your bracer fits snugly around your forearm. You sling your bow across your back and cinch your quiver at your hip. Your sergeant surveys the courtyard and nods. "Report, then prepare the next line," he says. You fall into step alongside your fellows and head for the armory to collect fresh arrows. Your stiff limbs flex with each stride, and you feel the familiar hum of purpose return to your blood. As you ascend the ramp to the wall, you lift your chin and draw in the fresh breeze. The ache in your hands flares for a moment, but you welcome the reminder of battle's price. You knock a new arrow in anticipation of the next volley. Your quiver feels heavy, but not unbearable. You step onto the crenellations and position yourself once more, ready to defend and to endure. You know that tomorrow you will again tend sore shoulders and blistered hands, but today you also carry the bond of shared hardship and the memory of a hardened victory. The tavern door thuds shut behind you, and a wave of heat and smoke folds around your shoulders as you step inside. The long wooden tables are scarred by years of tankard rings and blade nicks. The benches wobble when half the company squeezes onto one side, and the floor is strewn with straw damp from spilled ale and muddy boots. Behind the bar, the tavern keeper heaves a massive keg off its rack and cracks it open in one practiced motion. The hiss of foam rising is a promise of warmth and camaraderie that drives the chill of the evening from your bones. You shoulder your way through the crowd, nodding greetings to faces you have fought beside and recognizing a few new recruits who look wide-eyed at the chaotic comfort of the hall. The air smells of roasting boar, fat and spilled mead, of sweat warmed by flickering lanterns and the faint tang of ale-soaked wood. Above you, the rafters creak under the weight of smoke and song. A minstrel has taken the corner near the hearth, a battered lute in hand, and his first chords draw every eye and hush the clatter of mugs for a moment. You claim a spot at the end of a crowded table, your comrades sliding over to make room. A broad-shouldered archer slaps a heavy tankard of mead into your chest, sweet honey wine that glows amber in the firelight. You grasp the mug with both hands and drain half in a single swallow, feeling the warmth roll down your throat like liquid courage. Around you, voices lift in greeting and laughter, in boasts of impossible shots and near misses that turned into legends before breakfast. The minstrel begins a ballad in a low, clear voice that cuts through the din. He sings of the archer who stood alone on the northern ramparts and felled a charging knight with a single arrow. He weaves in the tragedy of that knight's fallen banner, the way it fluttered to the ground like a wounded bird, and the echo of hobnailed boots as reinforcements rushed to avenge him. The chorus swells with deep voices that thrum like a drumbeat as every tankard lifts and every throat opens in song. You join the chorus with a hearty shout, your voice rough but true, matching the rhythm of mug tapping on timber. The mead hisses when the tankard strikes the table, sending droplets of foam flying into the air. You laugh when a fellow archer breaks a lute string in his enthusiasm, and the minstrel grins through a flourish of discordant notes before improvising a gallop on the next chord. The crowd roars approval. Between verses, you swap toasts with your companions, saluting scars old and new, victories earned and battles yet to come. You clink mugs with the man who taught you the secret twist of the wrist, and with the apprentice whose first arrow found a target today despite trembling hands. You hear promises to share a barrel next month at the next muster, and plans to retell each night's song at every tavern between here and the coast. When the ballad ends, you cheer until your voice is hoarse. The minstrel lifts his hat in thanks and launches into a raucous drinking song that has everyone clapping in time and stamping boots until the rafters echo like a battlefield drum. You feel the familiar burn in your cheeks and the steady thrum in your chest, a reminder that you are alive, that you stand among brothers forged in sweat and steel, bound by the soft power of song and story. As the night deepens, the table becomes a tapestry of empty mugs and crumpled napkins. You lean back against the bench and watch sparks drift upward into the lantern smoke. Your palm still stings where your comrade rubbed salve into your blister, but the ache is sweet now, a badge of the day's trials. Around you, laughter and song continue without end, a living shield against the darkness beyond the tavern walls. You lift your mug for another toast to the unseen archers on distant ramparts, to the hounds tracking game through moonlit woods, to the smith who tempers steel for your arrows. You take a long drink of mead and feel its honeyed heat fill your blood. Then you join the chorus once more, your voice rising in the ballad of fallen heroes and arrowsmiths, forging bonds stronger than steel under these rough-hewn rafters. Your bow arm would cramp, your fingers would bleed, your spirit would be tested by wind and rain, hunger and endless drill. One day as a medieval archer begins before dawn and ends long after sunset. Imagine waking with joints so stiff that simply lifting your bow feels like hoisting a boulder. Every shot pulls muscles you did not know you had. Your shoulder knots into a tight coil and your forearm trembles. Yet you must draw again and again. Each pull an insistence of duty over comfort, knowing that missing that one crucial arrow could cost lives. Rain would soak through your tunic until it clings to your skin like a second layer of heavy cloth. Your boots would fill with muddy water as you tramp back and forth along the firing line. Each step pumps grit into your stockings until your heels chafe raw. Shivering, you slip into awkward stances, trying to find balance on slippery ground. Wind whistles through the arrows in your quiver, mocking your shaky aim. Still you knock and release, determined to steady your shot despite nature's effort to unsteady your nerves. Hunger gnaws at your gut by midday, a hollow ache that no ration of coarse bread or salted meat can fully banish. You sip lukewarm water from a wooden cup, tasting nothing but damp twigs. When fresh meat arrives, you slice it thin, chewing without pleasure because exhaustion has hollowed your appetite. You swallow each bite with gratitude but also dread, knowing the next meal might be days away in a long campaign. Your body demands calories even as your stomach rebels at the monotony. Sleep would be a brief visitor in your yurt or barracks, arriving only when your limbs finally give out. You lie fully dressed on a mat too thin to cushion your bones. The roof creaks under snow or rain, and rats skitter across your feet. You doze in fits between sentry calls and shouts of commanders. If you survive the night, you wake, bruised by the hard floor, shoulders stiff and wrists raw from gripping bowstrings. Fresh arrows await without mercy or rest. Discipline is relentless. Before sunrise, you drill in formation, marching shoulder to shoulder with comrades, muskets, or bows held heavy against the damp air. You learn to obey orders without question, and to fire in unison. Monotony tests your concentration more than battle ever will. Repetition becomes your existence. Drill, march, aim, fire, repeat. It is a loop that numbs you until the only escape is a single perfect shot that reawakens purpose and proves your skill. Yet, it is among your comrades that you find laughter and relief. Shared jokes about splintered shafts and crooked fletching lighten the mood between volleys. You trade stories of arrow flights so wild they sang tales of their own. Together, you mix salves to heal rope burns and bind blistered palms. You lean on each other's strength and skill. These bonds form the backbone of survival, reminding you that even if your body fails you, your fellowship will endure. Armor and gear add weight to each movement. Your bracer presses into your arm until the leather rubs sore. Your quiver bounces against your hip and your bow, though a trusted tool becomes a cumbersome burden when you sleep or march. Yet you know every piece must stay in place. One loose strap or misplaced arrow can turn a routine defense into a fatal vulnerability. You learn to adapt your body to the gear until you move as one unit. Between battles, you spend hours crafting arrows and fletching flights by hand, carving each shaft smooth with a knife that nicks your finger, splitting feathers and gluing them with sheep fat into perfect veins. If a single arrow fails in flight, it could doom a comrade. These hours of meticulous work add another layer of strain to already battered hands. Yet you take pride in each shaft you produce, knowing it carries your effort and your promise to protect. In the thick of battle, fear pulses through your veins like ice water. The ground trembles with the clash of steel and the cries of fallen soldiers. You steady your breath, nock an arrow, and let each shot carry not just wood and steel, but the weight of countless lives. Adrenaline sharpens your senses, but also numbs your pain. You aim through the smoke and the terror, believing in every shot that your arm will hold and your aim will be true. If you survive that day, you earn respect. The captain acknowledges your marksmanship with a curt nod. Comrades clap you on the shoulder and share a flask of spiced wine by firelight. You feel the swell of pride in your chest as stories of your shots pass from lips to eager ears. In that moment, the pain recedes, and you know why you endure each hardship, each blister, and each sleepless night. But living as they did would demand this each day without end. You would rise to aching limbs, march through mud and rain, fire arrow after arrow into the sky, bind wounds, share mead, and sleep on straw, then do it all again. Survive one day and you would earn a warrior's respect. Live as they did and you would find strength in every shot, every sweat-streaked smile, and every shared victory. Few possess the will to meet that daily grind, and even fewer the heart to carry on. Now, imagine doing it again tomorrow and the next day. That is why you would not last a day as a medieval archer.